On this episode of Intent Topics, we have special guest Eric Swanson of Greentech Media. Eric will be speaking about his experiences selling in a unique industry.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Intent Topics today. I'm here with Chris, and today we have Eric Swanson on the show. Eric, we are pumped to have you on the show. Tell us what you are doing now and how you got there.
Yeah, thanks, Logan. Thanks, Chris. Super stoked to be on the show. I work for one of the leading media and events companies in the energy and utility industry, and so we do some podcasting. We're pretty much the leader in the market when it comes to podcasts for the energy sector. So it's kind of fun to be on the other side of the microphone, if you will, as opposed to usually being the behind the scenes kind of guy or the behind the microphone kind of guy. So thanks for having me on. Like I said, I'm head of sales for Greentech Media. And so with that, I kind of run our sales department for events and all the different digital media efforts that we do.
Cool.
I mentioned podcasts. We do a lot of webinars. We have a very well-trafficked website and news channel for the what we kind of call the energy transition. Yep. So renewable energy, utility sector, and all the changes that are going on there. And cool. So I've been doing this similar kind of role for about 10 years now in the sales side of things and client relationships. So it's cool. It's a lot of fun. It's always changing.
So you were pretty much constantly selling ROI, right, against what's currently in place, right? Is that a lot of the conversations you're having? Yeah,
I mean, for the most part, I kind of in a very niche segment, right? So I mostly work with marketing folks. So marketing folks are usually my target or my customers or clients or what have you. Okay. And for them, they're trying, as we all know with marketers, right? They're kind of setting the table for sales ultimately. Right. So
I see. Yeah.
So it's kind of, you want to make sure that those marketing people are getting that ROI for ultimately what they're reporting to in the sales side of things. So it's kind of a unique role for sure.
Yeah. So the reason I asked is actually I had a brief stint with a startup in the Northeast, and we were selling geothermal heating and cooling, closed loop systems, and that paired with solar. And I was the sales marketing guy, right? Because there's like 5 of us. And it was literally just me trying to sell the ROI of a geothermal system, right? Yeah. And it was at a time when oil's $4+ a gallon. It was easier, but that's what it all came down to. So I got to imagine a fair amount of the media that you're doing revolves around knowledge around that, right? And information around that, right?
Yeah. And, ironically enough, I sold a podcast sponsorship to a geothermal company earlier this year in
that's great.
February, March timeframe. So, at the end of the day, it's all about ROI. I think, my biggest thing is it's from a sales perspective, I'm all about building that relationship. And so, for me, it's not worth it to even book a deal when I know the client's not going to be happy at the end of the day. So I do a lot of work on the back end to make sure that we're getting the right, product in front of them, the right, ROI, if you will. So it's cool. It's a lot of work there.
Nice.
So talk to us about, like when I think about sales and marketing and all these things, that one of the last places that my head goes is, energy and utilities and all that. But in the conversations that we had, it was fascinating because there's a lot to it, which I would imagine. So frame the conversation. What's it like being in that space where there's still advertising, there's still sales, even though it might not be, B2B tech or business to consumer tech. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely B2B. Of course, there's a B2C component as well when you're talking about the solar installers trying to
Sure.
sell to I mean, how many times do you get folks from Sunrun or Vivint trying to sell you some solar on your rooftop there in Massachusetts, Logan, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's all about the B2B side of things, and I think what's unique about the energy space, and I'd kind of gear this a little more towards the utility space versus the renewable side, is the sales cycle is ridiculously long. I mean, we're
Yeah.
talking 12 to 24 months at the short end of it.
Wow.
These utilities are regulated entities, so if they want to go and make a large software purchase or a large hardware purchase for that matter, I mean it takes forever to get them to get through. So the whole mantra of the buyer's journey is 70% complete before they even reach out to somebody at a company. That's even more so the case when it comes to the energy and utility space. So from my perspective, when I'm talking to marketing folks, it's not as much about strictly leads or even setting appointments or things of that nature. It's really more about how are these folks that are trying to sell to those utility and energy companies, how are they educating their customers, how are they positioning the company as thought leaders, so that when they're ready to ultimately pick up the phone and say, hey, I want to know a little bit more about this, that their company is top of mind. So it's definitely a unique space to think about, but yeah, it's more about that education and brand building and all of that than I think you would ever see in the B2C space.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it's the companies that are basically buying that media. They have to be very strategic with what they're doing, right? Because it's not like
Yeah.
they're running some sort of pay per click where they're going to be able to adjust course on a day to day basis, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like most of the work that we're doing with some of these companies trying to again sell to the energy and utility spaces, whether it's building out that thought leadership, it's spending the
Yeah.
time to write a white paper for them, or it's develop a custom podcast like this, where, as we know, podcasting is a different medium than just writing an article or writing a white paper. So you're really trying to help the customer and help the client kind of tell that narrative, which is, yeah, it's totally different than what with most of the guests that you guys have had on the podcast previously, I would think.
Yeah, this is really cool. So you're kind of it's like relationship selling, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things that you focus? Because it feels like the clients that you're selling to, a mistake is costly, and so you really need to be an expert at what you're doing. They need to really understand how they're positioning in the market. So, what does your day to day look like? Because I don't imagine it's like a lot of other people who are quote selling.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of. I find it kind of unique because, right, so I'm working with mostly marketing folks, so I need to be
Sure.
super knowledgeable in marketing, like in recent trends in marketing and understanding, retargeting campaigns or, ROI or SEO, things like that, like where you have to kind of be up to speed on that so you can speak their language. And then I also have to have a general knowledge of the energy industry, right? And know what
Right.
Yeah.
a CIS system is, or a MDM system, meter data management, customer information systems, or know what bifacial solar panels are and tracking systems and things of that nature. So I always like to say that I know enough to be dangerous on the
Yeah.
industry side of things, in understanding the energy space. So I know kind of what they're talking about, but or what they're trying to get out of things with a campaign. But yeah, it's kind of a mix between both. So a lot of the times I'm spending my day, not what I would call traditional selling, if you will. It's a lot of kind of knowing what's going on with my customers, and their businesses. And, when I see something that's of interest that might be in alignment with kind of the other side of where I spend the rest of my day, is understanding the industry and what, what we're doing at GTM to kind of figure out where's that perfect marriage, right? Does it make sense to do something that's leading up to a trade show that we have coming up, or maybe it's a major industry trade show that's coming up that I know some people want to get some cloud cover about their, announcements or products, or drive people to their booth, or whatever the case may be. So you're trying to kind of always, kind of keep an eye on both aspects of it and kind of figure out where the perfect middle ground is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's cool. So you're like just constantly assimilating lots of different information to try to position it with your clients, with yourself, to really, be successful. See, it's funny. We talk about it's like, oh, this is such a different world than traditional selling. But I feel like if the quote traditional sales roles spent more time doing what you're talking about, how much better conversations would they have if they were focused on really trying to assimilate that information, from both sides, customer, internal. It's fascinating. So what are some of the tricks that, because you're dealing with a fairly large amount of information, from the industry, from what you guys are doing, because GTM has a lot going on, and then with the client. So how do you? This is kind of like CRM, but on a whole nother level, right? So how are you managing that information and actioning against it?
Yeah, so I definitely spent a lot of time on LinkedIn and kind of seeing what folks, LinkedIn and Twitter for that matter, and kind of seeing what people are posting, what people are talking about, having a lot of conversations internally with our experts as well. I mean, that's one of the cool things about what we have here at GTM is we have an entire research arm of the company that all they do is spend time kind of understanding what's going on in the industry, trends, all of that. And so the more time you spend talking to them, and then therefore also reading some of our news and information and things that we have coming out, the more you kind of can kind of put together those marriages between what they're doing and what the customers are doing. So, so yeah, it's I mean, in terms of like a strict process, I don't really have one, to be honest with you. But yeah, it's just kind of always learning, constantly learning, constantly trying to put pieces together. And I'll say this. So you mentioned that if other salespeople kind of spent their day doing that, how much more successful they would be. So a real world experience that I just had last week, my wife and I are buying a new house, and Chris, as we talked about just a little bit ago, we also own a condo up in the mountains. And so I was talking to a mortgage company, and within the first 3 minutes of me having this conversation with this mortgage company about purchasing a house here in the Denver metro area, this person's telling me that their mortgage company specializes in what they call conned hotels, which is basically like an investment property where most mortgage companies don't, they don't touch those for whatever reason. I don't really know why. But this lady's sitting there like, well, we specialize in conned hotels. And I'm like, I was just thinking about starting to look at refinancing my loan up there and kind of pairing that with my loan down here. Right. And so sorry for the tangent here, but
no, that's great.
I was shocked at I'm like, is this lady reading my mind, or did she know that I had a condo up in the mountains that was a condo hotel? And anyway, so it was just, it made me think when you were saying that it's almost like that lady did do her homework before the call.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
Or statistically, like there's probably a lot of people in Denver metro that, go up the hill every weekend.
Yeah.
Right. That's cool. So did you get the loan?
Could be pure coincidence, but you never know.
Well, it's Northern market, right? That counts. Yeah. Sweet. So did you get the new house? Like what's the deal there?
Oh yeah. No, we're building a new house. So we signed the contract. They actually started digging on Friday. So
oh wow,
that's awesome.
Congrats. That's
Thanks.
fantastic.
Yeah. More debt. Thanks, guys.
More debt. Yeah.
America.
Go get them. Yeah. Cheap money. Yeah.
Nice. So talk to us, like, do you have any more sort of anecdotes about, your job and sort of like how you're really bringing this information, this data, and kind of assimilating it into your process, into building relationships? I'm super fascinated to understand, because I think it could have a huge value to, the people listening. As far as like, you have to do it, where other people, it's kind of like a nice to have, right? Like, yeah, I did some research. That was nice. You're like, I have to do it, because that's how, that's kind of the nature of the business. So do you have any anecdotes you can share with us that might be powerful?
Nothing in particular. I think one of the things that I think is super important about the utility space to think about, and this might not, completely answer your question here, but
sure.
The utilities, if you think about it from a kind of in the US perspective, for example, is, they're not necessarily competitive entities, right? So Logan, you're in Massachusetts, so you probably have like Eversource or National Grid as your utility.
Yeah.
They're not competing with Xcel Energy out here in Colorado for customers. So, it's really interesting to kind of understand that dynamic, and knowing that with that, those utilities want to kind of, learn from each other and or share stories, or just kind of, it's generally a very tight knit community, right? So because they're not, they're willing to get onto a webinar and talk about, how they're doing pricing, or what kind of computer systems they're using, or what, whatever, because they know they're not, you wouldn't expect State Farm and or Allstate to do that, right? Because they're competing for customers at the end of the day. So I think one of the things that I've always found is really interesting is to make sure that in my role, I understand kind of where, what are some interesting things that those utilities are doing, and then ultimately like what, vendors, as we call them, or like, solution providers, what are they doing as well that's kind of aligned with that interesting project. So I might read something that, Eversource is doing some really fascinating project, and I'll spend some time digging into who was the system integrator for that, who was the consulting firm that helped put all that together, who was the computer software company that kind of helped build that, who's the the contractor that built out that solar project, or the whatever it is, right? And so if you start putting things together and kind of piecing A with B with C together, you can go to some of those companies and say, hey, Eversource is promoting this. Why don't we talk about it on a webinar? Or why don't we talk about it in an article? Or so you're kind of, in a roundabout way, you're kind of piecing the story together already for them in some cases.
And isn't a lot of that information like publicly available too, through the bidding process and everything?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Most of it's public record. I don't dive into public records, to be honest with you, but
it's there. Yeah.
But it's there. And a lot of times, like here at GTM, a lot of our editors are doing that. They're hearing about different things and
keep their ear to the ground on what's being built and everything.
Exactly. And so a lot of times they know, or I see an article on our website that, one of our team wrote about, and, kind of take that to the next level.
That's so cool. So when you go to the software company, let's go on a webinar. Is that something that the software company is then using as an advertisement?
Yeah.
For themselves, or yep. Okay, cool. So interesting. So that's kind of like a prospecting play, is like really understanding what's going on in the space, and really having conversations on based on what that company has already done or just did.
Exactly. Yeah. So you can go to them and say, hey, I know you just did this project with Eversource. It's public, so let's talk about it. And in some cases you'll throw out a carrot saying, hey, I think we could get Eversource to speak on this too. Your customer speaking on a webinar with you, and that's obviously that's the best case scenario for everybody, right?
Right. Yeah, of course.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. So, I mean, I think that is still that's like amazingly relevant, because you're like, I don't go into public record. There's so many different websites with so much information about just about every company on the planet, that
Right.
doing a little bit of digging, you can get there. So this is fantastic. So talk to us a little bit about like the evolution. I know we mentioned it, so it's like oil and gas is kind of, falling by the wayside again. It's still a big deal, but then there's all these renewables that are coming into play and all that. So like, how do kind of these like buzz trends, which I know we see on the front side, like wind farms in Cape Cod, and that, that's an issue, or this and that. How does the kind of evolution of the industry affect what you're doing and kind of what your clients are doing, like boots on the ground, right? Like in the, the actual industry.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think everybody is now kind of walking on eggshells a little bit in terms of what they're what they're willing to talk about publicly. I think it's a everybody wants to talk about the reason I say that is that you start to hear people talking about my industry, right? The energy industry all across Main Street, if you will. So you hear about it in presidential debates, you hear about it in the news, you hear about friends asking questions about it, those kinds of things. So it's a very top of mind issue that people are starting to really kind of think about, talk about very, very regularly. I think the other thing to think about too is climate change is a very real issue. It's a very big threat to the world, right? Sure. And so from my perspective, on a personal level, I find it fascinating that I can play a very small part in that, right? And the reason I say that is GTM has some of the leading voices in the entire industry as it pertains to how the energy industry is combating climate change. And so it's fun that to think about that, again, in a very, very small way by keeping the lights on here, if you will, keeping the financial bottom line strong and healthy. We can do that. We can kind of help move that needle a little bit. So the industry's evolving. The industry's changing. There's things happening everywhere. But I think that climate change discussion to me is kind of one of the most fascinating parts on a personal level, if you will.
That's cool. It's kind of the butterfly effect, right? Like if you have the voice to influence how people make purchasing decisions and you guide them towards the technologies that are best for the environment, that's it's kind of a neat place to sit on the on the influence scale, know?
Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't necessarily, when I took the job about a year ago, I didn't necessarily think of that. And then about 6 months in, I was like, wait a minute, this is kind of cool. Like I'm actually, maybe it's not just, working for a paycheck or working for commissions and things like that. It's maybe we're working towards a greater good here, which I think is kind of fun. I mean, at the end of the day, the energy space is changing a lot. It's becoming a lot more mainstream. People are starting to really take notice of what's going on. There's a whole mantra of utilities are now looking at their customers instead of just the term ratepayer. They just get their bill every month and they just pay it, and you flip on the light and the light goes on. You turn on your laptop, the laptop boots up. Instead of looking at that, they're looking at them as actual people and actual customers, and they're starting to think about what can we do that's better serving them, right?
Yeah, that's interesting because for your customers, they need to be thinking about their install base, if you will, or customer base as an install base, like the SaaS model, right? And they've been doing this long before SaaS, software was out there. But the key is to retain customers, right? And so to think of it as just would you call it a rate?
Rate payer.
a ratepayer, it's a lot more than that. And especially in this world where all customer service in general has just taken a front seat where it wasn't so much before. It's interesting to hear that this industry that you're in or servicing is taking the same approach as well. Because I have a friend that has a oil company, and I've been trying to just get him very in the mindset to think about the SaaS model, and all right, what's your customer retention? What does it cost to get a customer and all that stuff? And he didn't have any analysis because he had purchased the company. I'm like, these people aren't thinking about this. This is incredible, and it's super valuable knowledge, and it's way more than just an invoice and a truck, right? In that industry. So that's interesting to hear. That's cool.
Well, and I think the other thing too is the way that if you think about the evolution of the energy space and the utility space is, right now it's a monopoly. I can't go and switch and get my electricity from Eversource, to use that example. My current utility is Excel. I can't switch and go to Eversource. I mean, some places can in Texas and et cetera, but I can't make that move. But it's not hard to believe that in the not so distant future, people can't make that decision and say, look, I'm going to go to Tesla. I'm going to buy the roof that they have where they, it turns into a solar roof. I'm going to put a power wall in my garage. I'm going to charge my car and power my house from solar and a battery. And I don't even need a utility anymore. So, I think as utilities are starting to think about that they could lose customers to that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Or that kind of a setup. They're starting to say, hey, maybe we need to do better about, managing our customers.
Yeah. So maybe that was the answer, but I'll ask the question anyways. Well, what do you think B2B salespeople can learn from your experiences in the energy space?
I think a lot of it is just, for one, be passionate about your space, right? Find the, maybe you don't really care that much about, solar and energy and utilities and whatever, but, find a way to be passionate about it. Right.
And authentic, right?
And
like we're always saying that here. Yeah. Authenticity is key. At least,
yeah.
That's our mantra.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, I mean, being that I've been in the space 10 years now, I kind of find that it's my little niche. I really enjoy, the people in it, the conversations that we have and all that. And then again, as I talked a little bit about was, kind of be that expert on both sides of things, right? Like know your industry, but then also know what makes your customers tick, right? Because at the end of the day, if they're coming to you purchasing something, they're putting their necks on the line in some cases, right? They made a case internally to get that budget to work with you. So, make sure that you're working with them and kind of putting together the right programs that make sense for them. So
nice.
Yeah.
Well, so we're rounding up towards the end here. So tell me, what do the next 12 months look like for Eric?
Oh man, I'm just hoping they're a little less hectic and less of a whirlwind than the last 12 months have been. So, between, like we talked about, new house coming, I'm not looking forward to moving, by the way. But yeah, new job, getting up to speed, all that. It's been an absolute whirlwind. So I'm hoping to, maybe have some time to breathe a little bit. And, I think on a serious note, like, honestly, I'd really like to spend some more time kind of working to develop my team a little bit more. Cool. We have two fantastic guys that are on my team, and I'd like to be able to say that I have a little bit more time to spend, kind of getting them going.
Yeah.
And not that they're not going right now, but utilizing
the rock star talent you have.
Exactly. I really think in the next 12 months we could do some pretty incredible things. And so I'm looking forward to, like I said, kind of taking a step back and getting a deep breath in and rocking and rolling. Awesome.
Great. Well, Eric, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure having you.
Yeah. Thanks for the invite, and hope to do it again soon.
You got it, man. Thanks for tuning in to Intent Topics, everyone. I'm Chris Battis.
And I'm Logan Kelly. Please give us a follow and a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. We will see you next time. Thanks a lot.
All right. Take care.